Okay, so this is on writing an equation of a parabola, and I'm going to probably split this into two parts because I think it's too much to put on a 15-minute video. So we'll get as far as we can and then we'll switch over to another video. So the first thing I wanted to show you or remind you about was writing an equation from a polynomial. And so I think up to this point you have probably just had so that we have a y equals, but we're going to see that you also can have an x equals equation, so we'll discuss that in just a second. So if you have a polynomial and you notice you have an x squared and an x term, then these two items here, the y and the -4, need to be moved to the other side. And what we're going to do is we're going to complete the square with the x terms. Okay, so if we take half of b and square it, that gives us 4, and we add that to both sides. Okay, and then we write this polynomial as a binomial squared. So half of b was a +2, and we're going to square it. And then we want to simplify this 4 plus 4, which is 8, and move it to the other side. Now, our y is negative, so that means that we are going to, have to change the sign everywhere. So we're going to have a negative in front of the parentheses, and we're going to have a +8, so that now we have a y equals equation. Okay, so this would be the vertex form of this equation by completing the square. So just do another one that same line is going along the same lines. We do have an x squared term, so we're going to complete the square with the x's, and we're going to move these two terms to the other side again, changing the signs. Alright, then we're going to take half of b and square it. So half of b is 3, squared is 9. We're going to add that to both sides and write this as a binomial squared. So our half of b was 3. And we're going to simplify -12 plus 9, which is -3. So when we move it, it's a +3. So we end up with this. So that means we have to divide this whole side by a -3 so we can write the equation as a y equals. So in front of the parentheses, we notice we have an understood 1, right? And then if we have 3 divided by -3, we have a -1 on the outside. Okay, so we just rewrote it in vertex form. This is our vertex, -3, -1, and then this this first term here, the a term, just determines how wide that parabola is going to be. Okay, now for you are going to have some that are do have a y squared term. Okay, so we're going to treat it the same exact way, only our equation won't come out to y equals, it'll come out to x equals. And I want to show you what that looks like. Okay, so we're going to, because our squared term is the y's, we're going to complete the square with the y's, and we're going to move our x, 2x over, and our 4 over. So if I take half of b and square it, I get 25. So we're going to add that to both sides. And we're going to write this as a binomial square. Now this gives us 21 when we simplify, so we're going to subtract it to move it. And then we're going to divide everything by 2. So that is going to give us an x equals 1/2, because there's an understood 1 here, y plus 5 squared, and then minus 21 over 5. So that didn't come out real pretty, but you know, it is what it is. Alright, so you can have an equation with y equals or with x equals. Now most of our parabolas are U-shaped, right? So most of them are going to look like that. We're going to see some today that are sideways. Okay, so that being said, those are the ones that have an x equals. It opens on the x. If it says y equals, it opens on the y. Okay, So let's look at a couple examples, graphing them. All right, vertex form, remember, we have an a, x minus h to the square plus k. All right, and remember this is our vertex. Okay, so our vertex here is -3, -1. So we're going to put a dot at -3, -1. That's where our turning point is. Now, for this particular graph, I would just find some points and find out what that would be. Okay? So we're going to use 0 because 0 is always easy. So if I stick a 0 in here, that gives me 3 to the square, which is 9, minus 1, which is 8. So if x is 0, y is 8. All right. Now we do have a mirrored image over to the other side. Okay, you always have that mirrored image. So this is going to be your parabola. Now all I had to do was find one other point other than the vertex, and I know where my parabola is going to go. Okay? So you can use a vertex to do that. Use small numbers, easy numbers to deal with. Okay? All right, let's try this one. Now it's x equals, so we're going to see what that looks like. We still have a vertex form of the equation. But because y is in the parentheses, our vertex coordinates have changed position. Okay? So this is our x, and this is our y. Okay? So let's look. We have a vertex here. Vertex have a -4 in the h position and a -2 in the k position. So -4, -2. And then again, I'm going to just pick a number. I'm going to pick 0 because 0 is always easy. And I'm going to stick a 0 in here for y so we can find out what the x is. So this is where y is 0, okay? So let's see what our x is for that one. So we've got 2 squared, which is 4, and it's a -4 minus 4. So that's a -8. So if y is 0, x is -8. And again, we have a mirrored point on the other side. Now look at the way that parabola opened. Now whether you remembered because it started with an x equals, we went left and right, or if you just plugged in a number, it shows you what direction this parabola should be moving in. Okay? So just sticking a 0 in, a 1 in, any of those would have been fine. I would pick the easiest number. But remember, if it says x equal, this value inside the parentheses is your k value, the y value of the vertex. Okay? So that's graphing and rewriting an equation. And the next part is going to talk about what are the components of a parabola that you need to be able to recognize. Okay, that's going to be a little bit more intense, and it's going to be properties that maybe you have not seen before. Okay, so we'll get to that one in the second part.